making the move to the Algarve, or to give them more information, to give them a feel for what it's like, to get you in touch with people who've actually had the experience. So today is not very presentation oriented, it's towards a conversation to share the stories of people who have done this before and who can give you advice and who can also talk about their businesses and what they do here, to show you that it's not just about living on a beach, that there is actually more to do in the Algarve than just have a holiday. There's a lot going on for it. So without more ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panel today. We've got Kelly Murtagh, who runs her own business in the arts industry, Sharon Farrell, who is in Blevins Franks, and she is in finance. Rob Jenner, who is the Chief Executive of Vilamoura World, who had the beautiful video that introduced us to this series. And Declan Cassidy, who is the Chief Executive of LazerTelecom, the best provider of telecom services in the Algarve. So I'm going to start today by asking all of our guests here to give a little bit of introduction. So Kelly, as you're on my left, can I start with you to say a little bit about who you are and what your circumstances are and what brought you to the Algarve, please?
Well, firstly, thank you, Arnold and Aoife, for the opportunity to speak a little bit about my life here in the Algarve. My name is Kelly Murtagh, and I moved here in 2010 with my husband Derek. A couple of years previous to that, he had invested in some property here. So following some holiday time here, we decided in 2010 to make the move full time. Since then, we have 4 children. And I know we'll always be classed as a blow-in, but we very much feel like this is our home now today.
Great, thanks, Kelly. And Sharon, could you introduce yourself, please?
Well, Aoife, we've been coming on family holidays for over 20 years, and during that time we bought a property here in Vilamoura, basically to visit more often, and really what it did, it became a home from home. And then 2018, I got the opportunity to relocate to the Algarve with Blevins Franks. So the decision was taken for me to sell my own financial advisory business and relocate. Anyway, as it happened, my son was still in education, and so it wasn't the best time for him to move. And we felt as a family that it would be better if I went ahead on my own. And that's what I did. And the way we looked at it was simply a 2-hour flight back to Ireland. Some people spend longer commuting, to London. So friends and family were very shocked and surprised, but it was part of a dream that we had always had. And although when I arrived here, we had built up a network of friends, but they sort of came and went seasonally, so they weren't here all the time. And I realized, being on my own, I needed really to connect and reach out to people permanently. And how I did that is, joining the Irish Portuguese Business Network and indeed other clubs and societies out here helped me sort of build a good community of support around me and give me, I suppose, a better sense of belonging really here and the country of residence, so
great.
That's where I am now.
Declan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So we've been here since 2018. Myself, my wife, and I have 3 small kids. So we came a more roundabout route than the majority who tend to come from Ireland or the UK. So we had spent about 8 years in the Caribbean, and then 5 years living in Miami. So we were half looking for somewhere in Europe a bit closer to home with good climate, safe, etc. So we got an opportunity to come here in 2018. So yeah, we've moved over and we've very much enjoyed it. You've kind of got island life in the Algarve, but the proximity to Lisbon and Seville and the big cities, whereas when you were on real islands in the Caribbean, you were very disconnected and very cut off from, large cities and things like that. So yeah, it's been a good move, Aoife.
Great. And Rob, you're not Irish, but we'll let you away with that for today.
Thank you.
So can you give us a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. So I first came down to Vilamoura for a weekend in 2004 from London, and kind of was mind blown really when I got here. The weather, you know, the people, the scenery, the beaches, and so forth. And it was amazing that something so nice was so proximate. And I think I'd been always kind of searching for that destination, going to various places in Europe and so forth, and it was here. So kept coming down on holiday. Then I bought a place here in 2010, just because, you know, it kind of made sense at that point. And then in 2015, I sold a business that I'd built up in Germany and moved down here, coincidentally under the non-habitual tax resident scheme, which maybe we'll talk around. But that was a coincidence. It wasn't that I'd planned the move for tax reasons. And then I kind of was retired in that sense. And then I ended up, and I never imagined I'd end up running the place. But, you know, I liked it so much that I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I'm very fortunate to be doing that for the last couple of years.
Great. Well, there's going to be a couple of people on the call who have no interest whatsoever in in working in the Algarve. But so what I want to do in the first instance for those people is ask you guys, starting with you, Kelly, what are the principal lifestyle benefits that brings important things to your life living in the Algarve?
Well, I suppose my work-life balance here is very important for me because I guess, as anybody knows with children, there's an awful lot of things to juggle. So the one thing that I didn't want as part of my life was traffic. And earlier on, 10 years ago, traffic was very much part of my everyday occurrence. So moving to Portugal and getting rid of 3 hours of that in my day was, you know, top of the list. Also the weather. And as I've always explained to people, my life here has two parts. So I wouldn't be under any illusion. You work very, very, very hard here, but that's one part of your day. And once that part of the day is over and you pick up your children, there is certainly another part of your day that's for you and for your kids, mainly due to the weather. So we get to kind of go out and enjoy bike rides and do whatever we want to do with them. So there is a definite work-life balance here. You do work hard. But for me, that was pivotal in moving down here to raise our family, for sure.
And Declan, can you tell us how the Algarve is so much better than the Caribbean?
So much better. I think it's a stage in life, isn't it? You know, like the Caribbean was great at a point in time, but we've 3 young kids, you know, 7, 6, and 4. I'm pretty sure. So like when it comes to education, you know, it's much better offering here than we would have had in the Caribbean. Then even, you know, I ended up in the doctors on Monday night at midnight, and just to be able to lift the phone and get you know, my little girl a few stitches, it would be a much bigger ordeal, you know, to try and get that done in the Caribbean. So from an education health perspective, and then the other big one with family and having kids is, again, I think Kelly mentioned it, and Rob, the proximity to home and the airlift that's available here. You know, you're 2.5 hours, you can practically commute. You know, we actually have a member of staff who comes over and back from Ireland. So that commute versus a 20-hour trip to the Caribbean, and, you know, grandparents able to see children, you know, children able to fly back and see the grandparents, and things like that. And then, as I said, you know, you can be in Lisbon in 2 hours, you could be in Seville in 2 hours. So you're not disconnected, you know, like you can be in a small Caribbean island. So yeah, it's got a lot to offer, and then it's got a nice climate, and, you know, you get a little bit of seasonality for about 6 weeks in December and January, where you actually get to light the fire and stuff, which is probably welcoming a little bit, but you like to get back to the heat then too, obviously.
And Sharon, the attractions of the Algarve outside of work for you?
For us, Aoife, as a family, it was the temperate climate. My husband hadn't been well, and we found that every time we came here, he felt so much better. And to be honest, I do think it was to do with the extra daylight hours. You know, the light and the lifestyle is just so much better here. But also there was a well-developed business and banking infrastructure. You know, there was a plethora of, you know, solicitors and accountants and other business support out there that, you know, for us, that we had always worked for ourselves and being self-employed. So the idea was that we might do that again. And if we did, you know, would there be the infrastructure there to do that? And there is here. So that was very reassuring. Also, the English was very widely spoken. Like I love learning languages and stuff, but my husband less so, you know, so the fact that it was widely spoken sort of took that onus that you wouldn't have to learn the language straight away to make your way. And also at the time when we bought we had a young child. And so there was a great variety of like sports and leisure and other activities here. You know, there was something really for everyone. So like, I mean, and it was very safe, you know, so if you wanted to play tennis or if you wanted to, you know, go out on the cycle paths, you could do that, or you could go and kayak on the Ria Famosa, or you could go up to Faro in the Old Town and have a look, you know, at all the Moorish influences, or you could go down to Sagres and learn a bit of history. You know, there's something, you know, so I think it was the diversity in the whole area, you know, and I haven't even begun to explore, you know, the middle and the north of the country yet. You know, I'm still sort of my time's still eating up here in the Algarve. But yeah, they were sort of the main reasons why we would have come as a family.
Yeah. And for you, Rob, I mean, obviously from where your perspective is, you're actually running a huge resort. So you have your own personal reasons for why the Algarve is attractive to you. But what do you see also, in addition to that, what do you see for the clients of Vilamoura? What are the attractions for them?
I think the base, I mean, summarizing what everyone's just said, I think is true for everyone. We have 3,000 hours of sunshine a year, which on average is over 8 hours a day, which makes a massive difference to your quality of life. There's something I notice when I'm in Northern Europe, immediately, that you just feel better. Life, you have a sunnier outlook on life. So I think that is a key feature. And then I think just the basics in life in Portugal in general are much more attainable and accessible, and certainly, generally speaking, cheaper as well. So it just gives you really good the basics in life. We try to do well, and then as a resort, you know, one of our features is on safety. Portugal, I think, is one of the top 5 safest countries in the world anyway. And then if you live in a resort like Vilamoura, we have a private security contract, so that is going on behind the scenes. But I also feel that, you know, the amenities that we have, whether it's sailing, horse riding, golf, tennis, archaeological museum, all of those things, the bars, the restaurants, the services, all of those things kind of make life easy. And so I think that's what a lot of people look for, with the convenience of the connectivity that Declan mentioned earlier, which is the flights, or Seville, Lisbon, all really close and all, you know, different, and awesome. And then just again, Iberia as well. It's a beautiful place. As I reflect on my, you know, where I grew up, you know, I had no idea that I would sort of end up here, but I'm massively happy to be here. Just for the quality of life more than anything else.
I'm going to stay with you, Rob, because obviously this is about living in the Algarve, and a key aspect of living anywhere is, where do you live and in what kind of environment do you live? Can you talk a little bit about certainly Vilamoura, your own resort, but also a little bit further beyond what people could expect if they stepped out of that and what they might see?
Sure. I think it's, I mean, we get that question a lot, and it really depends. I mean, that it's kind of obvious question or obvious answer, but it depends what you're looking for. I think just taking the Algarve as a range, you can find a very rural lifestyle here, not too far from the beaches, which gives you kind of traditional Portuguese, and, you know, secluded and a country lifestyle that you would find in the inland. You can still get the Atlantic coast in the Algarve as well, which gives you kind of that coastal Atlantic, pretty much like the coast of Ireland as well. I'd say the west coast of Ireland, except obviously the weather massively different. And then you've got some of the towns, some of which are more traditional than others. So a place like Tavira or Lagos have a well-defined history and an old town, but also a modern town around them, and they're very popular at the moment. Or you could get kind of the working towns, which is places like Olhão, which is a fishing port primarily, Portimão, which is the second city of the Algarve, which again is a vibrant big town, and then the capital Faro, which has the airport, which is kind of a blend of everything. Has a beach as well, but starts to become a lot busier as well. So it's very varied. You need to really think about what what kind of lifestyle you want to lead, because I think the decisions, that's obviously an important decision, and there is a specific place for you. Just as a final point, why do I like Vilamoura or a resort like Vilamoura? It's just the convenience for me. It's all kind of taken care of. Street lights, sidewalks, a post office, so all of those things, walkable, healthcare. So it's just my preference.
Mm-hmm. And Declan, I'm going to move to you now, because for anyone thinking of living in anywhere nowadays, and the pandemic has shown us this, and people are coming, going, well, if I'm going to be a digital nomad, I need connectivity. And that's what your business is about. So can you tell us a little bit about your business and what people can expect in the Algarve?
Yeah, so I run a business called LazerTelecom. So coming here from Miami, having been in telecoms, for 20 years, I wasn't expecting to see what I saw, my impression was that, providers like Comcast in the States would be so far ahead and such better speeds. And when I got here and saw the number of operators that were here and the speeds, and, we're continually expanding. So we're always looking at different markets and different places, but on average, the speeds that you can get down here for the digital nomads or the people that want to work remotely are between about 1.7 and 2x, what you can get in the Dublins and the Londons. In terms of fibre penetration on a whole, you're talking 70% penetration in Portugal. It's actually the leader in Europe in terms of fibre penetration on a whole. And even when you look at rural fibre connectivity, it lands at around 53%. Places like the UK are 8%. Ireland is quite lagging on that as well. So we ourselves provide speeds up to 1 gigabits per second. So again, knowing the Irish market, there's not too many operators that are delivering that. So it's catered very much to people who want remote working, who want to move out of a big city, but have the connectivity and the speeds and the ability to do everything you do in Dublin, London, but in a far more, pretty setting with a nice climate. So we would like to think we facilitate that. I think another consideration is when you look at Portugal, is it Lisbon, is it Porto, is it the Algarve? For us, one of the big considerations is obviously English speaking and the community that's here. So, I think that's a big plus. We have bilingual support, but I think one of the reasons we're very successful at expats is we have English speaking, and it's all humans. We don't do bots. So you get that, localized customer support and that experience. And, it always helps when people speak your language,
Indeed. And Kelly, you run a business that faces towards Ireland and is in Portugal. So you actually bridge the gap between being here and being there. How have you found, in the first instance, remotely working towards Ireland? And second of all, outside of the pandemic, how is it in terms of working towards Ireland?
Well, I set up Omey Projects in 2014, and basically I worked in the hospitality industry in Ireland for all of my life before I moved down here. So when I got involved in the arts in the Algarve, I saw an opportunity to work with hoteliers and investors on curating art for their projects. And so that's how we began. So basically we work with artists in Ireland, but we also work with artists here in Portugal. We mix and match it. Some Portuguese artists do projects in Ireland, and then they come down and they do projects here. We run a course of exhibitions here in the Magnolia Hotel when we're allowed to do so. We're looking forward to getting back to that again. I guess in the pandemic, it's very hard for them at the moment to reach their client. But we've spent the last 6 months putting everything up online, and that's worked really well for us. And funny enough, a couple of our first sales were Hong Kong and London, which kind of surprised us how we managed to get an audience from there. But we were happy with that, and we will expand our online presence there until we get our projects back online. I suppose just to say to Declan, it's very important for us to have connectivity because my designers now are dispersed and working from home. So we're dropping files on a daily basis into our team system. So having that in place in my studio is really, really important. In terms of the future for us, we're just waiting for everything to open back up again. And one of our last 2 projects are still not open yet, was a Reserva Club here in Quintalago, and also the Wren Hotel in Dublin, which probably everybody would know is the old Liberty Lane Theatre. So we're just looking forward to those opening back up again so we can showcase those and show what the artists have created for those projects. But it's an interesting business, and we do have the flexibility here, the creativity and the space to go to the beach if we need to get away and think about the direction of our projects. And that's really, really important for creative people to have that space. I find I don't have the noise here, so we're able to give our clients the best of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I think I want to say Declan's a very modest man when he talks about the kind of quality of his service. Even, given what he said about the Portuguese kind of fibre penetration, laser is, for me, for our company, a game changer. We, I have it at home. I had the best that Portugal could offer without laser, and it was just, Stone Age in comparison. And I am so grateful that Laser's business is here in the Algarve, because for the pandemic it would have been very difficult for us. I mean, we have it in our offices. We're putting it into every home we build, because without steady, fast broadband, our clients couldn't work from home, and now they get better internet than they do in central London. And that is not every part of Portugal has that, and certainly not every part of Europe has that, but it really, you can't underestimate that nowadays.
Rob, I think with the pandemic as well, Aoife, like even Kelly at the start of it, I think people's requirements have changed to just wanting the basic, whereas at the start of the pandemic, Kelly has young kids, same as myself. So you've got kids that need to be in one part of the house, homeschooling, you're in another part of the house, and then maybe your partner is in another part of the house. So suddenly everything that goes around the Wi-Fi becomes important, which is the hardware that's critical to deliver the speeds that you can get. So we do work a lot, and the same for all of the homes that Rob is designing. They'll all come at the best in class speeds, but the speeds are only as good as the hardware that they can travel through. So, more and more the likes of Rob are becoming aware and investing in the actual infrastructure to support the speeds as well. And across the pool, the garden, the downstairs, the upstairs, with the pandemic and all the remote working, the whole house needs to be connected instead of historically just the living room or one router that kind of did most, bits of the house, but a lot of black spots.
Mm-hmm. And Sharon, I'm going to come to you now because you do something that's really important, which is wealth management for people who are planning a retirement. Can you tell us a little bit about the business that you're involved in and how you could help people moving towards the Algarve?
Well, Blevins Franks, Aoife, provide tax-driven strategic financial planning and wealth management advice to both UK and Irish nationals living here in the Algarve. And there's many tax advantages to avail of whilst working or indeed, you know, retiring here. Our market is mainly those that are thinking of retiring, you know, to the Algarve or indeed already are here. You know, we have like the NHR scheme, you know, that Portugal has introduced in 2009, and really that's to encourage many more people coming here, and it offers certain Portuguese earnings, you know, at 20%. It means dividends can be paid with either no or very little tax, and UK and certain Irish pension schemes can be received, you know, with only a 10% tax reduction. So it is, you know, really really good and tax efficient, and offers a very low cost of living for people that want to come here and live out their retirement. And it's very easy to become resident here. Like, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. You know, you spend 183 days, or you make it your home, basically, by becoming habitually resident here. So, you know, it's not rocket science, but there are ways and means of doing things, and planning is key. So, you know, most people sort of rush ahead and do things and they don't think about the consequences, but it's best really to talk to somebody, plan it, then do it, you know. So we would always advise to come and talk to either us or to others, and get the planning right first. Mm-hmm.
And Rob, you mentioned earlier on that you came on the NHR, and it applies to people who are working as well as those who are retiring, does it?
Yeah. So I mean, again, I'm not a tax advisor, and take your own tax advice and all the other caveats, but you can come down to Portugal under the non-habitual tax resident scheme, and for the first 10 years you pay a 20% flat tax rate on your Portuguese sourced income. Royalties are not taxed in Portugal, so you know, if you're in the fortunate position of getting those, you have very attractive tax regime here, which is why people like Michael Fassbender, Madonna, people like that kind of arrived here. I think there is very attractive inheritance tax regime here as well, so the rates here are much lower than elsewhere in Europe. And then if you have income that could have been taxed or was taxed in a non-blacklisted jurisdiction, then Portugal won't assess any further tax on it. So, for example, if you happen to have, you know, income that's taxed in a lower rate, for example, Luxembourg or the United States, you can pay your US taxes or your Luxembourg taxes, which may or may not be lower than Portuguese rates, and then bring them to Portugal and not pay taxes. So long story short, there are a lot of tax optionality that Portugal offers, and not a lot of people know about it.
I think the product is it's a marketeer's dream, you know, pay less tax and live in the sun.
Yeah, and there's also the option of the longer term planning, Declan, as well. You know, so there's also the option of the longer term planning after NHR. You know, so yeah, it just doesn't, you know, stop after the 10 years. You know, we can put options in place that, you know, allow you to continue on in a tax efficient manner after that. Yeah.
But I think Sharon made a good point, which is get advice before you come down. And I think I would add to that one of the surprises, and this surprises me every day, and will all of my time here, is that coming from kind of the UK common law system, and I think Ireland's the same, to the kind of Napoleonic code of Europe and Southern Europe in particular, where everything is expressly forbidden unless it's expressly allowed. Bureaucracy here can be brutal. You need a lot of patience and a good lawyer on speed dial. You know, there are a lot of lawyers here. They're not, you know, super expensive, but Portuguese life kind of revolves around the law.
Yeah, and I could just add to that, Rob, is that, you know, if you are looking at hiring, you know, professional services, that you get somebody that is really familiar with the expat situation, you know, so, you know, because we have a lot of really good accountancy and lawyer practices here, but, you know, not all of them are, you know, so familiar with how to deal with the expat situation, you know, moving from one tax jurisdiction to another. So that is key in any of your planning as well. And again, that's something that we can help with, because we have built up a number of links of people that we know and, you know, are reassured that can provide those services.
Yeah, top tip for everybody. There was a question just now. Cars are ridiculously expensive in Portugal.
Absolutely.
The reason for that, and that's why, you know, gasoline is expensive as well, is that there are numerous ways for kind of income taxes. How can I put this politely? Income taxes are not efficiently collected in Portugal, and so what the government does is really tax in a regressive manner, in the sense that rates of VAT are high. But also consumption taxes, you know, like the taxes on fuel, cars and so forth, are extremely high because people can't avoid it. And so one of the things that anybody thinking of coming down to Portugal should do is take advantage of a scheme whereby if you've owned a car for 12 months in the EU, you can bring your car to Portugal free of taxes, and it pays to get a lawyer to do it for you. But you could save, you know, for example, on a, you know, BMW 3 Series or something, 20,000 euros easily.
Yeah, there is quite a bit of paperwork associated though with the matriculation part, you know. And
but it's worth it.
Yeah, it is very much worth it. So you need to be prepared as well.
Yeah, I think moving on to the kind of things that Rob has mentioned there. I mean, the bureaucracy is one thing, and I think all of you have experienced it, yeah?
Yeah.
But is there any other surprises, that not necessarily positive ones, that you came across when you moved to Portugal? Declan, you were one of the most recent arrivals.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, I'd never stepped in Portugal. I've been around Europe, but haven't been out the other side of the world for a long time. I've never been here. You know, and I remember looking at the accounts the first time I arrived, and I was trying to figure out the costs, etc. So, you know, salaries are extremely low compared to Ireland, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. So I think, you know, that's something to be aware of, because with salaries in Portugal being a lot lower, you need to find the diamonds. You know, I have some amazing staff here, but I think you have to think outside the box in terms of if you're running a business or you're planning to run a business, in terms of the hiring, because there's a huge amount of, we talked about the successful people that are down here. So there's a huge amount of knowledge and IP with, you know, a more, I suppose, elderly generation who have retired down here, or semi-retired, but are looking for something to do, or happy to give advice, or are happy to get involved on a director level, a board level, or you know, part-time level. And then, you know, we've looked at bringing in younger people, but the one thing to be a little bit aware of is, you know, the access to good quality resources, because a lot do travel up to Lisbon, or over to Barcelona, or over to London or Dublin. So that for me was you know, because we had planned to hire a lot of people, and then that, you know, you know, you look at unemployment rates and percentages and stats, and you think, sure, this is fine, you know, we're hiring and this is great news. But it is a challenge to get, you know, talented people in the Algarve. And I don't know, Rob or Kelly or Sharon, what your thoughts are, but that was a bit of a shock for me.
I think for me, you know, coming here as a single, you know, I had to work really hard to establish new connections, because as I said, all the people I knew, you know, were more seasonal. They sort of dropped in and out, and so I ended up joining lots of different groups and societies, you know, whether it was golf, music, art, walk, whatever, you know, and that helped me, you know, meet people that are here, living here. Things that are good that people might know about here is it's very reasonably priced, the likes of private medical care. We have really easy access to good quality healthcare here. And me having a teenager, found out there's a fantastic music scene, obviously post-COVID, here for teenagers. You know, there's lots of concerts and things going on, both here in the Algarve and in Lisbon, you know, so that's really, really good. I think, you know, I can tell a story really about how you know, I have found living here. In November there's lots of Americans have moved to the Algarve and find it, you know, the lifestyle here really appealing to them. And so I have sort of, through golf and different things, have met some of these people. And on Thanksgiving, I didn't even know it was Thanksgiving. For me, it was just another work day, and I was coming out of the office and it was late and it was cold and it was miserable and I was tired. And I came out and of course jumped into the car, and of course it was one of those nights, oh for goodness sake, I forgot to put, you know, I need to go and get diesel. And I went and got diesel, and by the time I got home, we're talking nearly 8 o'clock, and there was a message: hi Sharon, don't know don't know what time you're finishing work, but you know, we're having an open house Thanksgiving, just pop over anytime. I was like, honestly, I rushed in the door, dropped all the bags out the door again, and you know, within an hour I was fed, warmed and welcomed, and it was just fantastic. And that is what being, you know, part of living here that people don't see. It's a real sense of community, because like, you know, your friends become like your surrogate family. You know, you depend on them to help in situations, because not everything goes to plan all the time, you know.
And I suppose my kids are in the international school here in Vilamoura. The mixing with all of the different cultures as well. They're experiencing, you know, different foods, different music, all of that things. So it is true. I mean, our next door neighbors, you know, are Russian, and we'll go down there, or, you know, we've got friends from Belgium and we go there. You know, it's not all Irish or English, you know, there's many, many different cultures here. We're all in it kind of together through the schools and the kids and everything else. So the kids really are getting a diverse, you know, lust for life for all over the world.
Mm-hmm. I see that there's quite a few questions coming in. Arnold, could you, is there anything we need to pose before we move on to the next bit, which is just talking about what way people see the Algarve evolving? Is there any questions that we need to answer fairly quickly?
Yeah, I mean, maybe one or two. One is asking, she's asking, but that's probably from a business point of view, you know, what would you say is the advantage of the Algarve as opposed to Lisbon? Why would you move to the Algarve and opposed to Lisbon? I mean, it's pretty obvious, but that's one of the questions.
You want to take that up?
I think the English speaking is obviously a huge plus of the Algarve, you know, and to Sharon and Kelly's point, and I have friends in Lisbon, but the community down here, as I mentioned earlier, my little one, you know, had to go to the doctor at midnight the other night, and I could lift the phone and have friends here in 2 minutes, which typically in Ireland you'd ring your family, right? So there's a great community, but the English speaking, you know, and it's living in Miami, where it's, believe it or not, it's largely Spanish speaking, and living in a lot of countries that were foreign speaking, English speaking is a huge plus.
Yeah, it certainly helps. It really does.
Yeah. And then there was some, you know, more a question about what would be the tax advantage in Portugal over Spain. Don't know if anybody can answer that.
Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I would say one key element is Spain has a global wealth tax. So apart from Madrid, which I don't quite understand, but be careful of that. That can catch a lot of people out, whereas Portugal doesn't have that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be familiar with the, you know, but what I do know in Spain is that there's for the different districts, there's different tax in each of those. So it's not like one band that covers the whole country. So it would depend on where you're actually moving to in Spain, I think.
Yeah. Just another question I saw, which is a really good one that I was going to mention on private healthcare. The private healthcare, even without insurance, is obscenely good value in Portugal. and very accessible to get hold of. You know, I had an MRI scan the other day. I have an insurance which isn't expensive by any stretch of means, but so they kind of give you a 50% discount, but it cost me €60 and I booked it with 48 hours notice. I mean, the concept of getting an MRI scan in London without a long kind of you know, process with your GP and talking to your insurance company and all the rest of it, and then paying your excess, which is probably more than what it costs in Portugal, you know, is pretty mind-blowing. So you know, it's, you know, from that perspective, you know, for people from Northern Europe, it's very good value. Sadly, I think this is something that you know, I reflect on, you know, given my job. You know, Portuguese and Portugal is not the richest country in Europe by a country mile, and so there is a big difference between rich and poor here. So for Portuguese standards, that's a lot of money, and so, you know, again, another top tip from me would be, you know, no need to flash your wealth here. It's always good to be very discreet, and in many ways, I mean, as Declan can attest to, some of the richest guys are some of the most modest guys here, and I think that's a very wise thing to be.
I'd like to focus a moment just a little bit extra on the healthcare thing, because that is so important for anybody, from anybody having children to having, you know, to literally having them, Kelly, like 4 of them, and then actually raising them and all those kind of things. And you know, as you get older, healthcare is so important. Just Kelly, could you give us a little snapshot of what the healthcare system looks like in the Algarve itself?
Well, I've had experience of both, actually. Holles Street in Dublin, which probably a lot of people will know of, and that was 16 years ago. So I remember back then, I think I had 1 scan at 12 weeks, and that was it. Off you go, black and white, and we'll see you in 9 months or whatever, 6 months. To having the boys here in Faro, Gambelish and Faro, private healthcare again, very cost effective. If ever I needed anything, I was in within, you know, a split second. Very little waiting time, and I think, Declan, you'll probably know this as well. If your child has a problem, you're there in 20 minutes, and you're rarely waiting any longer than an hour in the A&E to get seen to, whether X-ray or anything like that. You're home again within two hours, 3 hours, depending on the problem. Having the boys here, I can just say it was like being in a hotel, really, and that's true. You're in 2 days. It's not very expensive, as Rob mentioned, and you get the best of care. I mean, if you want any amount of scans, they're not that expensive. So if you have a little worry, you know, 6 months down the road or whatever, it's all English speaking as well. You know, when I came here first, there was this kind of fear that they didn't allow the man into the delivery room, and I heard all these kind of stories back then, and I said, oh God, this is terrible. This is like when my parents had a baby. And but that's definitely not the case. I mean, videos, photos, whatever you want, and yeah, very, very well looked after. And the aftercare as well, I have to say, because my youngest boy had double his hip dysplasia when he was born. So we were in and out, I would say, of the hospital every other day of the week for the first 3 months. And where we kind of heard stories that he would have a brace and blah, blah, blah. Within 6 months, he was totally free and is running around today like any other child. So I have to say, 100% hand on heart, that is something that is one of the best things about living down here.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the other things that I want to explore is the idea of, you know, moving around and transport. I mean, I know that the transport links via airport, notwithstanding a pandemic, are excellent. But what is it essential to have a car down there? Can you get public transport? Is it safe to go on a bicycle?
No, you need a car for sure, definitely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't depend, well, it's just personally, I don't think I would depend on public transport. I have taken the train to Lisbon to work on many occasions. The high-speed train is better than the slower one. Wi-Fi can be a little bit tricky if you're planning to work on the train on the way to Lisbon. Forget it for about 2 hours because you've no connection. But the train to Lisbon is quite nice, and you get down again on that same train in the evening. So it's not necessarily to drive up and down to Lisbon, but definitely in the Algarve, you would need a car. My clients, I travel quite a bit when I was able. So a lot of my clients are in Cape Verde, Ireland, and the Azores Islands. So I would have taken flight paths from Faro to Lisbon to all of those different destinations. And that's pretty easy. I mean, in the Algarve, you drive to the airport in 20 minutes from where I am. I would say it's an hour and a half, maybe from the other end of the Algarve, but it's very accessible for working.
And Rob, around resorts, what's it like transport?
E-bike, like it's as life-changing as Declan's LazerTelecom. So in Vilamoura, which is obviously is a 1,700 hectare estate, an e-bike is an ideal way to just cruise around and do that. But you can walk everywhere here. But I agree. If you know anywhere going further afield, getting a car is quite important, and the public transport is not great here. I see people waiting for buses, and I kind of wince. And the train speeds are, even the high-speed trains. I mean, I lived and worked in Germany, and so when you see kind of high-speed train, by Portuguese standards, they've still got a long way to go there. But again, I come back to the point, which is this is still a very poor country, and it's easy to forget. Especially in somewhere like Vilamoura, it's easy to forget that because you're kind of surrounded by wealth and nice things, but actually, it's still 40 odd years ago. This was a very poor country, and so I always try to be sensitive to that.
I think if you're not keen on driving, I mean, Uber here is, everything is quite close. As Kelly said, there's good connectivity if you need to get to Lisbon or somewhere else. But in terms of travel around locally, there's great Uber service as well.
And it's cheap. I mean, taxis
in
Lisbon, it's
so cheap. So I mean, if you're not keen on driving, I would agree with all the advice. Car is a must. But for anyone who's, for whatever reason, not keen on driving, I mean, I use Uber quite a bit myself here, and it's fantastic, and it's very cheap.
Mm-hmm. Can I talk to you a little bit more about your leisure activities? So we hear lots about it's the lifestyle, and obviously for a lot of people that's leisure, but some people admitted that that's just sitting on a beach, and that's fine. But you guys, what do you see? Is there football for kids? Is there a GAA club? Is there what's in the Algarve for people if they're going to spend their time there?
Well, I can just talk for my guys. My boys are doing rugby in Lule. They learn how to swim very well here in the campus. The campus facility has tennis and paddle, so they play there. And they play in Vilamoura, which also has the tennis and the paddle. The GAA team hasn't come down here quite yet, but I know
I think they're working on it.
They are working on that.
It's a work in progress. Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Irish people down to give them some tutorials on that. But hopefully it will come down here, because I think a team between Lisbon and the Algarve will be.
It'd be great.
A nice Sunday scenario.
Get a bit of competitive spirit going, Kelly.
And the cash guys will trounce you guys. Don't even turn up,
Well, you've had about 2 years more on us, I think. So
I think the paddle is hugely popular here. Like I am a football guy, but when I came here first, there was 6-a-sides and 11-a-sides, and I still play a bit in Brown's Gym and a few other places. But I mean, paddle and tennis. Paddle is huge. But again, my kids, same as Kelly's, they go horse riding, they go to tennis lessons, they play tennis. There's so much for them to do. They go swimming. There's any amount of leisure activities if you've got the time for it. And from a family perspective, I think the other important point actually, and myself and Kelly were chatting about this, is it's very catered to young families and children. The restaurants, the hospitality, the wait staff. Here we would bring our kids far more with us than we would have in Miami. You bring them to the restaurant, you bring them for lunch, you bring them to the restaurant on the beach and things like that. So really the requirements for
it's not frowned upon, Declan, you know what I mean? Whereas at home you sort of getting funny looks if you had your kids in the restaurant late on, whereas here it's like, that's just normal.
Yeah.
And Rob, you were mentioning just before the call started that there's you've got the Olympic training team in certain, what I can't remember which category it was for sailing, because you're at the marina there and obviously it's got world-class facilities. Is there much exhibition sport down around the Algarve?
Much exhibition. Well, the Algarve's got two premier, sorry, I've got a bit of sunshine here for all of you guys missing that, but there are two Portuguese first division teams at the moment from a football perspective, soccer perspective. One thing that's pretty cool when the borders are open is to drive to Seville. They've got Betis and FC Sevilla there. You can get some pretty high quality soccer there and a great experience. We bring down a golf tournament here to Vilamoura called the Portugal Masters, which is a European PGA event, which has a prize purse of 1.5 million euros. So it's quite a big deal. It's not the Masters or anything like that, but that's important. Tennis tournaments, show jumping. We have Olympic qualifying show jumping events here. So there's I'm not going to say there's a massive football club here or anything like that, but certainly plenty of things to see. Sometimes some rugby at Browns. They used to have a good rugby tournament as well.
Actually, yeah. There's lots of different clubs and societies too for the retired groups that come in, particularly, different, obviously you can join different golf clubs and whatever, or golf societies, and if you're interested in art, you can join those, or if you're interested in music, there is something for everybody here. It's just a matter of finding out what it is that you're interested in, and off you go. I mean, it's very diverse, lots of variety.
I didn't even know I was interested in paddle until I got here.
I didn't know what paddle was until I came here.
No, me either. I played about 3 times a week.
Yeah.
I still don't know what it is, and everybody talks about it.
I tried to play.
So, what I want to do now is open up at the end to some of the questions that we're getting. But each of you has a very varied experience of living and working in Portugal. So I'm going to start with you, Rob, and say, if you were giving advice to people about making the move to Portugal, what do you think would be important for them to understand?
Bureaucracy, getting a good lawyer, planning everything in advance before you get here on the key things. Don't hesitate in terms of the language. I think the Algarve is very, they realise, the locals realise they need to speak English by and large. Lisbon and Porto, there's pretty widely spoken English. Outside those areas, it gets a bit more challenging. But yeah, I wouldn't hesitate. Life's not hard here. It really isn't. And the climate here is phenomenal.
Sharon?
What was the question, Aoife?
So the question is, what would be your advice for someone coming or considering coming to live in the Algarve?
I think the key one would be to take advice before you come, and asking, because everybody's situation is different, but we all face the same challenges when we arrive, about getting your residencia if you want to become resident here. And then it's looking at whether the non-habitual residency scheme would be suitable for you, so looking at that. And as Rob says, a good lawyer, a good accountant, and a good tax advisor is always good.
Kelly?
Yeah, I would be of the same, the lawyer and the accountant. And I suppose just to make sure that you do have income and enough income to support your lifestyles here, even though it is a little bit, it is cheaper. You don't have things like, you know, maybe children's allowance that you might have at home, or various different things like that. So just to be aware that, aware of those things. And I suppose getting your kids' names into schools and sorting that out maybe before you come down. I think that's quite important, because the Algarve is getting quite busy now, and spaces are quite restricted. So a little bit of pre-planning, as Sharon said, is very important on all of those issues.
Good question. I was just going to say, good question popped up, which is long-term rentals properties. I think obviously it's always a good idea if you're not certain about where you want to be. You can rent first, kind of try before you buy. It is hard to get good quality long-term rental accommodation in the Algarve. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, you can get more money for renting in summer for 2 months than you can, or, you know, if you're an owner of a property, than you can for the whole of the year renting long-term. And so that is, you kind of puts off owners. The second thing is that residential landlord and tenant law is very tenant favorable over the long term. Short term, it's okay, but long-term leases give tenants significant protections. And so, you know, the culmination of that is that it's pretty difficult to get good value, good quality, long-term rental accommodation. And so my advice to people would be, don't expect to rent your dream home, you know, your buying dream home. I think that's going to be like finding a needle in a haystack. So just bear that in mind. Don't get put off by it. Don't get disappointed by it. It's just the way the market is.
I think on the rentals as well, and we learned the hard way, was I arrived myself during the summer and didn't do enough research, and thought I had taken, you know, a lovely rental, you know, with a nice outdoor area, etc., not factoring in that a lot of the homes here are actually built to let the heat out, because it gets, you know, so cold during the summer. And then my wife and kids arrived and the place was freezing. You know, there was no insulation. It was freezing. There was, you know, the heating system was awful. So it was a learning curve for us, because, you know, what looks great in June, July may not necessarily be the same in December, Jan. So just to research how the house fares up during the couple of colder months is worth thinking about too.
There's an old saying in Portugal that Algarvian, or Portuguese, but Algarvian houses are hot in summer and cold in winter. So you'd think that they would be, you know, just because they're cold in winter, they keep cool in summer, but they don't. They heat up as well. So it's quite a that's quite unusual. We tried to build, you know, not trying to sort of get on the soapbox, but we tried to build with A-rated kind of accommodation, and we're trying a passive house concept here as well, which is a very efficient and very pleasant atmosphere within the house. But again, one of the challenges is that people see it as kind of an investment market, or they aren't necessarily owner occupiers, so they don't really think about the running costs of living in the accommodation or the real estate that they own.
On the flip side of that, Rob, too, is just looking, you know, apart from the rentals, the actual buying process here is fairly straightforward. At least I find it very straightforward. You know, there was no surprises, no hiccups, and you know, it was strangely reassuring. You know, when they ask for a larger deposit here when you're buying, you know, it leads to more stable house prices, I think, throughout the region.
Yeah, and there's no real gazumping or gazundering because of the way the contracts work. So that's quite good. My advice would be, get a good real estate agent. I mean, there are a lot of real estate agents in the Algarve, but getting a good you know, agent that's been here a long time is a really good factor. People come in and out of that sector, and there can be some pretty dicey agents, but look for the ones that've been here a long time. They're very helpful.
I think going back to your point about the running costs, the thing that surprised us, Rob, was that, you know, electricity and gas are equally, if not more expensive than they are in Ireland. And you pay for water, by the way. and you pay municipal taxes, and you
Yeah.
pay local taxes for bin collection and everything like that. So you
Yeah.
will pay for everything, and that does come as a surprise.
The EDP can be quite expensive. And I know, going back to the cold house, we actually were one of those people that bought that cold house that was lovely in the summer and freezing, and kind of go away for 2 weeks at Christmas and a little bit damp. But we we actually insulated the outside of our house, and for not a lot of money, and that's really worked out, just as a note.
Infrared panel heating is pretty good, and then obviously with the amount of sun that we get, which is troubling me at the moment, but with the way photovoltaic is working now, solar panels, which we're about to put on our office building here, the payback period is so quick, so that if you can work out the bureaucracy of self-consumption, where you generate your own electricity and then you just work your energy uses through to the sun, that can be a major, or will definitely, in my opinion, be a major piece of the future, and it's pretty inexpensive to do. So I think but the electricity prices here are eye-watering, and that's fundamentally because they add VAT at full rate here, again because they need to raise taxes because of the nature of Portuguese fiscal situation.
And I would like to point out to anyone, because I live in Lisbon, that it is considerably colder in Lisbon than it is in the Algarve.
That's another thing. I saw some of the comments coming through. Keep them coming, because they're kind of fun to read, and they're all really good comments and questions. The Algarve is at 37 to 38 degrees north, and that means that the sun's UV heat heats the Algarve all year round, and that stops at the 40th parallel, and that's where Lisbon is. So if anybody wonders,
very good.
if anybody wonders why Porto is so cold, and the Algarve is still pretty warm, that's basically why.
I think one of the other questions that was interesting, because when I moved abroad initially in 2006, the first thing I looked for was there an, as you do, was there an Irish group, was there an Irish football club or whatever. So even though the Gaelic club is a work in progress, over this side, you've got places like Dano's that have big St. Patrick's Day parades, which is part of the campus event, not parades, but parties and things like that. And same in Vilamoura, when the Gaelic matches are on, or the hurling, there's no shortage of Irish meetups or Irish associations, or things going on. There's a very, very, and I know, Kelly, you said it's actually grown a lot since you got here, but there's a very large Irish community and it centers, as I said, around different places for sport, for social, for dinners. There's Irish nights. So I think it was Tricia, but whoever asked about that, that would be one of the least concerns moving here, is there's a very active and vibrant expat community, and in particular a very active and vibrant Irish community, and lots of places where the Irish do catch up from time to time.
Yeah, but you do have to reach out, Declan, and talk to people. You're not going to meet them sitting in the house either. A lot of people come, or they come as a couple, and sometimes for myself, because I came on my own, I had to reach out, to people, to meet people. But as part of a couple, when I came here, you sort of were like your own wee bubble, and it was I think if you're here as a couple, there's a danger of becoming ghettoized nearly, in that, if you don't expand beyond that.
I think as an expat anywhere, nobody's going to knock on your door. You've got to make an effort. You've got to put yourself out there. One of the best things I saw here was in one of the schools, they've actually got obviously without the pandemic, a coffee shop, and that was a great way for my wife to meet other mothers in a similar boat and things like that. So you drop the kids off, and there's a coffee shop for parents to have a coffee after drop off, and for her that was a great way to meet people like Kelly and other friends she has here through the school, so that was a really, really good one.
We're at an hour now, which I think is more or less enough for most people. So what I want to do is ask you, Sharon, just to finish up our part of the formal bit of the conversation before we just finish off with the last few questions. So Sharon, you're the chair of the IPBN branch in the Algarve. What can the IPBN do to help people who are considering the move to the Algarve, either temporarily or permanently? How can the IPBN help them?
Well, for a start, first and foremost, it's a great place to find support, Aoife, you know, because we run a variety of events and different things. So you get a chance to participate and promote your business, if that's what you're doing. You also get to connect with other businesses. You can find opportunities and develop ideas. It's like, you know, one of the ones I met in Dublin last year, there was a real estate agent here. The person in Dublin did interior design, you know, put the two people together, and there's a new business growing, you know. So you get also a chance to tell your story, because we have lots of events, newsletters and social media where you get to showcase yourself and reach out to more, you know, to more people. And we also have industry experts, you know, from accountants and solicitors, and, you know, to help you with any of the teething issues that you would have in running a business, or HR issues, anything like that there. And obviously we have state agency support both here and in Ireland, you know, so it provides a good reassurance that you're on the right foot. So and then of course there's us, you know, we're very social,
all of us.
Absolutely.
But in fairness,
I have to say as well, we have a great Irish embassy in Lisbon. I think it's important to point that out as well. Ralph Vickery, I think he's always very supportive of all of us here, and whether you're stuck for a passport or if you need anything, they're only ever on the end of the phone. So together with the Irish Portugal Business Network, I think it's very nice for us to have it. Thank you.
You were going to say something, Declan?
I was just going to say, in terms of the IPBN, like how I solved my cold house was I went to one of the, I wasn't here long, but went to one of the IPBN events at the Magnolia Hotel in Kinta. And again, through the network, just got chatting to people and just chatting about settling in and stuff. And I actually found, you know, a home that actually was warm through the IPBN. And then obviously got to know quite a few people, which helped get introduced to other people. So outside of the school, it was very helpful for us in terms of meeting people, and also just helpful context, like simple stuff like that, where should I look, or who should I speak to, or I see loads of questions on there about plumbers and you know, underfloor heating and all that. And again, having a network like that on top of your friends, obviously once you're settled here, is invaluable to find out who's the right guy, who do I call, you know. And as you know, I said, those things are invaluable when you're abroad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is, it is really, really helpful to have that, I have to say, Declan. Yeah, build up those contacts.
And Rob, for you, because you're one of the principal sponsors of this Algarve Living series, how does the IPBN deliver for you guys?
Events like this, the Irish community is very, very important to the Algarve, to Vilamoura. I would say it's a bigger market than the Brits at the moment, and has been for several years. And I think that's cool. I think Irish people are much more fun than the Brits, to be honest. It's nice to have you guys around. So you know, it's a key market for us. So
are you saying we're more chilled out, Rob?
No comment. No, I'm trying to think of the right word. I think it's just an approach to life that is chilled out is one, I guess, the easiest way, but an approach to life that lends itself very well to Portugal. You know, Atlantic coastal countries. Just the weather's different. But other than that, it's you know, it's fun. It's, you know, there are 4 Irish pubs in Vilamoura's marina, and they're always the most rocking, you know, places, you know, on earth. Actually, I think they're going to be people. The first pub on Mars is going to be an Irish pub, guaranteed.
Probably. So before we close out, Arnold, is there any questions that remain outstanding that we haven't answered?
Yeah, I think at the beginning there were 1 or 2 questions about the traveling, that they seem that maybe there is a less in terms of flights, seasonality flights, that maybe there is less choice at the moment. I mean, obviously now everybody is confined at home, but afterwards.
I might take that one, Arnold, because I would be flying back and forth a lot to Ireland, obviously, because my family are still there. And I, will fly both into Dublin or, Belfast, whichever, and mainly into Dublin. And I have never found an issue getting a flight, ever. So, I mean, there's Ryanair and Aer Lingus come in, and from the north, we have EasyJet and Ryanair. So, it's not an issue.
And for anyone wondering, from Lisbon during the summer in normal times, you probably have 5 flights a day, 2 Ryanair, 2 TAP, and 1 Aer Lingus, if not 2 Aer Lingus on some days. And it's only 2 hours from Lisbon Airport down to the Algarve. So if you felt you were stuck, you could go up 2 hours up the road.
That's true, actually, Aoife, because when the COVID first hit, and there was the situation where, do I take a train up to Lisbon and fly from Lisbon? So there's always options. You'll get home or back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got Seville. I think Rob mentioned yesterday, Seville is only an hour and a half away.
Yeah,
probably a couple of flights out of there. It's can be toll free, so it's not expensive to get to Seville to fly home.
It's cheaper.
Frequent.
Yeah, it's cheaper both in the tolls, and it's quicker in the cars and the parking to fly from Seville, and then it opens up a whole different raft of Ryanair flights. So Michael O'Leary and the guys definitely serve all of Europe. I mean, it's a game changer for Portugal. The only time winter, definitely there are less flights, and then the point-to-point flights reduce significantly. So there is a difference. But for Dublin and London, I mean, never. There's easily 3 flights a day all year round.
Yeah.
I mean, even for Ireland, it's going into Cork, Knock, Shannon. It's not just Dublin. There's such a variety of flights available.
Yeah, we have 6 months where we can fly to the west of Ireland through Knock, in and out, and it's so handy to get home. For anybody watching from the west of Ireland, hello.
Any other questions, Arnold?
No, I mean, I think you have covered. Rob has taken also some of the questions. There were lots of comments, great comments. So everybody really enjoyed. There were some comments about, how can they, if we are organizing meetings and all that. But I would suggest everybody to go and visit our website, www.ireland/portugal.com, and they will have all the information about events that we are organizing. So, but yes, we have regular events when people can meet up, for sure.
And Arnold, there's 3 more events to come up for this. What dates are they on?
Yeah, so the next webinars, we've got 3 lining up. The next one will be on February the 11th, then February the 25th, and March the 10th. But I will send to everybody who registered and everybody present today, I will send the agenda for the next webinars. And you don't need to register again. Everybody who registered for this webinar will receive the information in due time.
And of course, if anybody has questions that they'd like to address with anybody, get in touch with Arnold and he'll put you in touch with Kelly, Sharon, Rob, or Declan, or even myself. And it has been our pleasure to have you with us today for this conversation. I hope it was informative and that gave you some ideas about what an amazing lifestyle you could have in the Algarve. And like I said, the IPBN should be your port of call if you're considering making the journey. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.